I pressed play on my laptop, and the entire living room went silent. My mother's face drained of color. My sister Ngozi started hyperventilating. And my husband Chidi finally understood why I'd asked everyone to gather that Sunday afternoon. But let me take you back to the beginning because you need to understand how we got here. My name is Amara, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, I married the love of my life, Chidi. We met at a tech conference in Lagos, where I was presenting a new software my company had developed. He was there representing his architecture firm, looking for digital solutions for their design projects. I remember he approached me after my presentation, not to flirt, but to genuinely discuss the technology. That's who Chidi is. Thoughtful, respectful, a man of integrity. Our marriage has been everything I dreamed of. I work as a senior developer at one of the top tech companies in Lagos, and Chidi runs his own architecture firm. We built a beautiful home together in Lekki, not just in the physical sense, but in every way that matters. We laugh together. We support each other's dreams. We're partners in the truest sense of the word. Or at least we were, until 3 months ago when my younger sister Ngozi knocked on our door with 2 suitcases and tears streaming down her face. Ngozi is 28, 4 years younger than me, and she's always been my mother's favorite. I don't say that with bitterness, it's just a fact I've lived with my entire life. Mama always called her my baby, always made excuses for her, always gave her whatever she wanted. While I was studying late into the night to maintain my scholarship, Ngozi was out partying, knowing Mama would smooth things over if she failed her exams. And she did fail, repeatedly, eventually dropping out of university altogether. Growing up, Ngozi had this way of wanting everything I had. When I got my first bicycle at age 10 after saving money from doing chores, Ngozi cried until Mama bought her one too, even though she was only 6 and couldn't ride it. When I was preparing for my secondary school entrance exams, I came home one day to find my project notes torn to pieces, scattered across my bedroom floor. Ngozi, who was 7 at the time, stood in the doorway with this strange blank expression. She said she was looking for paper to draw on. Mama scolded her gently, but made me apologize for leaving my things where she could reach them. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I got into university, Ngozi suddenly decided she wanted to study the same course as me, even though she'd shown no interest before. When I started dating Chidi, Ngozi would always find reasons to be around when he visited, laughing too loud at his jokes, touching his arm unnecessarily. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was my sister. Surely, she wouldn't cross that line. 3 months ago, Ngozi called me crying. She'd lost her job at the boutique where she worked as a sales assistant. The owner had caught her taking money from the register. Ngozi swore it was a misunderstanding, that she was going to pay it back, that her boss had it out for her. I didn't entirely believe her, but she's my sister. She asked if she could stay with us, just temporarily, until she got back on her feet. Chidi was hesitant. He didn't say much, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Still, he agreed because he knew family was important to me. The first week was fine. Ngozi seemed genuinely grateful. She cooked dinner a few times, cleaned the house, stayed in her guest room watching Netflix. I started to think maybe this would be good for our relationship. Maybe living together as adults would help us bond in ways we never did as children. But then I started noticing things. Small things at first. I'd come home from work and smell my perfume, the expensive one Chidi bought me for our anniversary, lingering in the hallway. I'd find my makeup scattered on the bathroom counter, not quite put back the way I left it. When I mentioned it to Ngozi, she apologized sweetly, said she'd just borrowed a little, hoped I didn't mind. What could I say? They were just things. Then her wardrobe changed. Ngozi had always dressed casually, jeans and t-shirts mostly. But suddenly she was walking around our home in tiny shorts and tank tops with no bra. I'm not a prude, but this was different. She'd bend over right in front of Chidi to pick up something she'd conveniently dropped. She'd stretch in the doorway when he was in the room, arching her back like a cat. I watched my husband become increasingly uncomfortable, his eyes darting away, his body language closing off. One evening, about 2 weeks into her stay, Chidi came into our bedroom and closed the door behind him. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face with both hands, something he only does when he's really stressed. He told me he needed to talk to me about Ngozi. My heart started pounding because I'd been seeing the signs too, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. He explained that earlier that day, he'd been working from home in his study when Ngozi knocked and asked if he wanted lunch. He said yes, thinking she'd just bring him a plate. Instead, she came back with 2 plates and sat in his study, crossing her legs, leaning forward so he could see down her shirt. She kept asking him personal questions about our relationship, whether he was happy, whether he felt appreciated. Chidi said he cut the conversation short and told her he had a conference call. He looked miserable telling me this, like he felt guilty even though he'd done nothing wrong. I wanted to confront Ngozi right then, but Chidi asked me not to. He said he didn't want to cause problems between me and my sister, that maybe he was reading too much into it. But I knew better. I've known Ngozi my whole life. This wasn't innocent. The next morning, I met my best friend Kemi for coffee before work. Kemi and I have been friends since university. She's the sister I wish I had, the one who tells me the truth even when it hurts. I told her everything, and she didn't even look surprised. She set down her cup and looked me straight in the eye. She said, "Amara, that girl is trouble. I've seen how she looks at Chidi. Like he's a prize she wants to win. You need to handle this before it gets worse." I went home that evening determined to pay closer attention. And what I saw made my blood run cold. Ngozi was creating situations to be alone with my husband. When I was in the shower, she'd knock on our bedroom door asking Chidi where I kept the extra towels, even though I'd shown her 3 times. When I was cooking dinner, she'd ask him to help her reach something on a high shelf in her room. Always something that required him to be in her space, in close proximity. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. I was getting dressed in our bedroom when I heard Chidi yelp. I rushed out to find him standing in the hallway in just a towel, water dripping from his hair. Ngozi was standing there in a sheer nightgown, her hand over her mouth in mock surprise. She said she didn't know he was in the shower, that the door wasn't locked, that she just needed to grab her face wash. But our house has 2 bathrooms. She had no reason to use ours. Chidi was shaking when he came back into our room. Not from cold, but from anger and frustration. He told me everything that had been happening. How she'd asked him to help move her bed because it was too close to the window, and when he came into her room, she was wearing shorts so tiny they barely covered anything. How she'd sit next to him on the couch when I left the room, pressing her thigh against his. How she'd find excuses to touch him, his shoulder, his arm, once even his chest when she claimed she was reaching for the remote. He said he was telling me everything because he couldn't take it anymore, that he felt like he was being hunted in his own home. I believed him. I knew exactly what Ngozi was doing, because I'd seen her do versions of it our whole lives. She wanted what I had. And this time, what I had was a good man who loved me. That Sunday, I decided to confront her. I waited until Chidi left to meet his brother Obiora for lunch. I found Ngozi in the kitchen making herself a smoothie, humming along to whatever was playing in her earbuds. I asked her directly if there was something going on, if she was uncomfortable here, if maybe she needed to think about finding her own place soon. Her transformation was instant. The carefree girl vanished, replaced by someone wounded and innocent. Her eyes filled with tears. She asked me how I could say such a thing, whether I was trying to throw her out on the streets, whether I'd forgotten she was my sister. She said she'd noticed I'd been acting strange, cold toward her, and now she understood why. I was looking for a reason to kick her out. She played the victim so perfectly that for a moment, I almost doubted myself. Almost. But I didn't. Because I knew her. I'd spent 28 years watching her manipulate our mother, our father, everyone around her. I wasn't going to fall for it. That night, after Chidi fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing. I needed proof. I needed to protect my husband and my marriage, but I also needed evidence that couldn't be denied. An idea formed, one that made me feel slightly sick, but also completely necessary. The next day, while Ngozi was out supposedly job hunting, I went to a security store in Victoria Island. I told the salesman I needed a small, discreet camera for home security. He showed me several options, and I chose one disguised as a phone charger. It was tiny, unnoticeable, and it connected to an app on my phone where I could watch live footage or review recordings. I felt guilty installing it. It felt like a violation of privacy, like I was stooping to some paranoid level I never thought I'd reach. But then I remembered Chidi's face when he told me about Ngozi's behavior. I remembered the fear in his voice that no one would believe him if she decided to escalate this. I remembered every time Ngozi had lied and gotten away with it because she was the baby, because Mama always took her side. I placed the camera on my dresser, angled perfectly to capture our entire bedroom. It looked exactly like a phone charger plugged into the wall. No one would ever suspect it. That evening, Chidi and I were lying in bed when I told him my plan. I had a business trip coming up in 2 weeks, a tech conference in Abuja. I was supposed to go for 3 days. I told Chidi I was going to pretend to go on that trip, but I'd actually stay in a hotel here in Lagos. I'd watch the camera feed and see what Ngozi did when she thought I was gone. Chidi looked at me like I was crazy at first. He asked if I really thought it would come to that if Ngozi would actually try something. I told him I knew my sister. If she thought the coast was clear, she'd make her move. And we needed to catch her in the act, not just for us, but because I had a feeling this was going to get much worse before it got better. He agreed, reluctantly. He trusted my instincts, even though I could see the whole situation was wearing on him. My strong, confident husband was being reduced to looking over his shoulder in his own home. The 2 weeks crawled by. I watched Ngozi carefully, and she watched Chidi. She'd gotten bolder, more obvious. She'd walk around in just a towel, claiming she forgot her clothes in the dryer. She'd ask Chidi to taste whatever she was cooking, feeding him with a spoon while maintaining eye contact just a bit too long. It was grotesque to watch, but I documented everything mentally. Finally, the day of my supposed trip arrived. I packed my suitcase that morning, making a big show of it. I told Ngozi I'd be gone for 3 days, asked her to help Chidi with anything he needed around the house. She smiled at me, that sweet, innocent smile, and said, of course, that's what family is for. Chidi drove me to the airport, but instead of going inside, I had him drop me at a hotel nearby. I checked in using cash, didn't want any digital trail. The room was small and impersonal, but it had Wi-Fi, and that's all I needed. I opened the app on my phone and saw our bedroom in perfect clarity. The camera worked beautifully. Now all I had to do was wait. Chidi texted me that he was home, that Ngozi had made dinner, and seemed normal. I told him to be careful, to keep his guard up, and that I was watching everything. Before we continue, if you're finding this story as intense as it felt to live through, please subscribe to this channel. You won't believe what happens next, and I share more real-life stories like this that need to be heard. The first evening was uneventful. Chidi stayed in his study working late. Ngozi knocked once to offer him tea, but he declined through the door. I watched the empty bedroom on my screen, my heart pounding with anxiety and anticipation. Have you ever had to go this far to protect your marriage? Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. The second day, things started to shift. The second day started quietly enough. I sat in that hotel room, laptop open, watching the camera feed like my life depended on it. Because, in many ways, it did. I'd ordered room service for breakfast, but the food sat untouched on the tray. My stomach was too twisted with anxiety to eat anything. Every few minutes, I'd check my phone to see if Chidi had texted, then force myself to look back at the screen. The camera had a perfect view of our bedroom. I could see our bed with its deep blue comforter, the one we'd picked out together at that home store in Victoria Island. I could see the dresser where the camera sat, disguised as an innocent phone charger. I could see the door, and I found myself staring at it, waiting for it to open, dreading what I might see when it did. Chidi had texted me that morning saying he was working from his study, that Ngozi had been quiet, hadn't tried to interact with him much. Part of me felt relieved. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this whole elaborate trap was unnecessary, born from paranoia and past hurts. Maybe Ngozi really had changed, and I was judging her too harshly based on who she used to be. But a bigger part of me, the part that had grown up watching my sister operate, knew better. Ngozi was patient when she wanted something. She knew how to wait, how to pick her moment. And with me supposedly hundreds of kilometers away in Abuja, she had all the time in the world. Around noon, I watched Chidi enter our bedroom on the camera feed. He was looking for a file he'd left on the nightstand. He grabbed it, glanced around the room, and for a moment, his eyes landed right on the camera. He couldn't see me, but I felt like we were connected in that moment. He looked tired, stressed, the weight of this situation pressing down on him. Then he left, closing the door behind him. The afternoon dragged on. I tried to work on some coding projects on my laptop, anything to distract myself, but I couldn't focus. Every notification sound made me jump. I kept the camera feed running in a small window on my screen, my eyes constantly darting to it. At around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Chidi. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. He told me Ngozi had just knocked on his study door, asking if he wanted her to make dinner. He'd said no, that he'd order something. She'd lingered in the doorway, he said, just standing there looking at him in this way that made his skin crawl. Finally, she'd left, but he could feel it building. Something was coming. He could sense it. I told him to be careful, to lock his study door if he had to call me immediately if anything happened. He promised he would. After we hung up, I stared at that camera feed with such intensity, my eyes started to hurt. The sun set over Lagos, and the evening crept in. I watched the bedroom grow darker through the camera until the only light came from the hallway seeping under the door. My heart was racing. I felt sick with anticipation and dread. This was my sister, my blood, and I was setting a trap for her like she was some kind of predator. What did that say about our family? What did that say about me? But then I thought about Chidi, about his kindness, his integrity, his right to feel safe in his own home, about how easily a man's life could be destroyed by false accusations, how quickly people would believe the worst. I was protecting him. I had to keep reminding myself of that. At 8:30, Chidi texted me. Going to bed early. Study door locked. Love you. I replied. Love you too. I'm watching. You're safe. I watched him enter our bedroom on the camera feed. He was in his pajamas, simple blue cotton pants, and a white t-shirt. He looked exhausted. He climbed into bed, picked up the book from his nightstand, a novel about architecture history he'd been reading for weeks, and settled in. The lamp on his side of the bed cast a warm glow across the room. For about 30 minutes, nothing happened. Chidi read his book, occasionally adjusting his pillow, turning a page. I started to relax slightly. Maybe tonight wouldn't be the night. Maybe Ngozi had decided to behave, or maybe she was smarter than I thought and suspected something. Then, at 9:07, I saw the bedroom door handle turn. My entire body went rigid. I leaned closer to my laptop screen, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The door opened slowly, and Ngozi stepped inside. I will never forget what I saw in that moment. My sister, wearing a nightgown so sheer it left absolutely nothing to the imagination. It was white, almost translucent, and underneath it, she was completely naked. Her hair was down, flowing over her shoulders in waves she'd clearly spent time styling. She'd put on makeup, dark smoky eyes, glossy lips. She looked like she was going to seduce someone. And that someone was my husband. On the screen, I saw Chidi look up from his book. His face registered shock, then immediate discomfort. He sat up straighter, pulling the comforter up higher as if it could create a barrier between them. I couldn't hear what they were saying. The camera I'd bought didn't have audio, a fact I was now desperately regretting. But I could read their body language, see their expressions, and that told me everything I needed to know. Ngozi moved toward the bed slowly, her hips swaying. She was saying something, her lips moving, one hand pressed to her chest in what looked like distress. Chidi was shaking his head, pointing toward the door. He looked uncomfortable, cornered. She moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, my side of the bed, and I wanted to scream. She was still talking, and now I could see she was crying, tears running down her carefully made-up face. But even through the grainy camera feed, I could tell those tears were calculated. I'd seen Ngozi cry on command since she was 5 years old. Chidi's expression softened slightly. That's who he is, compassionate to a fault. He was saying something, probably offering to call me, to get her some water, anything to get her out of our bedroom without being harsh. But Ngozi wasn't leaving. She reached out and touched his arm. I watched my husband physically recoil, pulling his arm away. He was talking more firmly now. I could see it in the set of his jaw, the way he was gesturing toward the door. And then it happened. Ngozi lunged at him. One moment she was sitting on the edge of the bed, and the next, she was practically in his lap, her arms around his neck, trying to press her lips against his. The movement was so sudden, so aggressive, that Chidi barely had time to react. But he did react. He grabbed her arms and physically pushed her away from him, so hard that she stumbled backward off the bed. His face was a mixture of shock, anger, and disgust. He was standing now, pointing at the door, his mouth moving rapidly. I didn't need audio to know he was telling her to get out. Ngozi recovered quickly. She got to her feet and came at him again, this time grabbing at his shirt, trying to pull him toward her. Her face had changed. The fake tears were gone, replaced by something determined, almost desperate. She was trying to touch his chest, his face, anywhere she could reach. Chidi grabbed her wrists and held her away from him, shouting now. I could see the veins in his neck, the fury in his eyes. He was a gentleman, but he'd been pushed too far. He released her wrists and pointed at the door again, his whole body language screaming, "Get out." And that's when I saw it. The moment that changed everything. Ngozi's face transformed completely. The seduction, the fake vulnerability, all of it vanished. What replaced it was cold, calculated rage. Her expression went hard, her eyes narrowing into slits. She stared at Chidi for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, could see her making a decision. She took 2 steps backward, and then her face changed again, this time into an expression of pure terror. She started backing toward the door, her hands up as if protecting herself from an attacker. And then she ran. She ran out of that bedroom screaming. I sat frozen in that hotel room, my hands over my mouth, watching the empty bedroom on my screen. Chidi stood there in shock, his hands still raised from where he'd been pointing at the door. He looked confused, terrified, like he couldn't process what had just happened. Then I heard it, even through the walls of my hotel room, even across the distance. Screaming. Ngozi was screaming loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. My phone started ringing. It was Chidi, I answered, and his voice was panicked, breathless. He told me Ngozi had just run out of our bedroom screaming, that she'd locked herself in her room, that he could hear her on the phone with someone, and oh God, Amara, what was happening? What should he do? I told him to stay calm, to stay exactly where he was, not to go near her room, not to try to talk to her. I told him I had everything on camera, that he'd done nothing wrong, and that I was coming home. I started throwing my things into my bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. But I forced myself to sit back down at the laptop. I needed to see this through. I needed to watch what Ngozi did next because I knew in my bones that she wasn't done. Through the thin walls of our house, the camera's microphone just barely picked up sounds from the hallway. I turned the volume up as high as it would go and listened. Ngozi was on the phone, her voice hysterical, breaking with sobs. And then I heard the words that made my blood run cold. "Mama, please, you have to come now." Chidi, he attacked me. He tried to force himself on me.
No, 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 no.
I grabbed my phone and called Chidi back. He was hyperventilating, telling me that Ngozi was telling people he'd attacked her, that she was calling our mother, that he could hear her through the door making these horrible accusations, and what was he supposed to do? Should he call the police? Should he leave the house? I told him to stay put, to lock our bedroom door, to not engage with Ngozi at all. I told him I was recording everything, that I had proof of what really happened, that he needed to trust me. Then my phone started blowing up with calls. First from my mother, then my father, then my auntie Ifunanya, then Chidi's brother Obiora. I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to think, to plan, to make sure I handled this perfectly, because Ngozi had just lit a fire that could burn down everything we'd built. I forced myself to download the camera footage from the cloud. My hands were shaking so badly, I kept mistyping the password. Finally, I got it downloaded, backed it up in 3 different places, my phone, a USB drive, my cloud storage. This footage was everything. This footage was the truth. Another call from my mother. Then a text. How could you marry such a monster? Your sister is traumatized. We are coming there now. My heart shattered. My own mother believed in Ngozi without question, without even hearing Chidi's side, without considering for 1 second that her precious baby might be lying. But I shouldn't have been surprised. Mama had been believing Ngozi's lies for 28 years. Why would tonight be any different? I called Chidi again. He sounded like he was crying, something I'd only heard once before when his father died. He told me that Ngozi had called at least 5 different family members, that she was building a story, telling everyone he'd come into her room, that he'd tried to force himself on her, that she'd barely escaped. The lies were spreading like wildfire, and each person she called would tell 2 more people, and those people would tell others, and by morning, my husband would be labeled a rapist by our entire family and community. I could hear Ngozi through Chidi's phone, still in her room, still on the phone, her voice carrying through the house. She was crying to someone else now, probably my auntie Ifunanya, giving vivid details of an attack that never happened. She was saying Chidi had been making advances for weeks, that she'd been afraid to tell me, that tonight he'd finally cornered her, that she'd fought him off, that she was terrified. Each word was a knife in my chest. This was my sister, my blood. And she was trying to destroy an innocent man's life to cover up her own attempted seduction. She was willing to let him be branded a rapist, possibly arrested, possibly imprisoned, all because he'd rejected her. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It was white-hot, all-consuming, righteous. I had spent my entire life making excuses for Ngozi, understanding that Mama's favoritism had damaged her, giving her chance after chance. But this was unforgivable. This was evil. My phone rang again. This time it was Obiora, Chidi's older brother. I answered. Obiora is a lawyer, calm and analytical even in crisis. He told me he'd just gotten a hysterical call from Mama Adiz saying Chidi had assaulted Ngozi. He asked me, very calmly, if I knew what was happening. I told him everything. About Ngozi's behavior over the past weeks, about the camera, about what I'd just witnessed, about the lies she was spreading right now. There was a long pause. Then Obiora said, "Do you have the footage secure?" I told him yes, backed up in multiple places.
He said, "Good. Don't tell anyone about it yet.
Let them come. Let them believe her. And then we show them the truth all at once. If we reveal it now, she'll find a way to discredit it, claim it's edited, get ahead of the narrative. We need the element of surprise." He was right. As much as I wanted to start texting everyone the video right that second, I knew he was right. We needed to wait. We needed to gather everyone together and show them irrefutable proof of what really happened. Obiora said he was coming to the house right now, that Chidi shouldn't be alone, that he'd help him manage whoever showed up. He told me to come home, that we needed to plan this carefully. I grabbed my bag and left that hotel room, my mind racing. The drive back to our house in Lekki felt like it took hours, even though it was only 20 minutes. The streets were dark, the city settling into its late evening rhythm, and here I was, racing home to salvage my husband's reputation and confront my sister's monstrous lies. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw several cars already there. My parents' car, Auntie Ifunanya's car, Obiora's car. The confrontation had already begun. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering myself. Inside that house were people I loved, people who currently believed my husband was a rapist because my sister was a convincing liar. Inside that house was my marriage, my future, hanging in the balance. And inside my phone was the truth, waiting to be revealed. If you're still watching, I need you to subscribe right now because what happens next will leave you speechless. The confrontation that was about to unfold would change my family forever. I took a deep breath, grabbed my laptop bag with the footage secure inside, and walked into my house. I could hear raised voices before I even opened the door. My mother was shouting, her voice shrill with emotion. My father's deeper tones trying to calm her down. Auntie Ifunanya's sharp questions cutting through the chaos. And underneath it all, Ngozi sobbing, playing the victim to perfection. I opened the door and stepped inside. Every head turned toward me. The living room fell silent. My mother's face was streaked with tears. She looked at me with such disappointment, such pain, like I had personally betrayed her by marrying Chidi. My father looked grim, aged 10 years in one night. Auntie Ifunanya's eyes were sharp, assessing, taking in every detail. Chidi was sitting on the couch, Obiora standing beside him like a lawyer protecting his client. My husband looked broken, his eyes red, his shoulders slumped. When he saw me, something in his expression shifted. Hope. Relief. He knew I had the truth. And there, curled up in the armchair, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm Lagos night, was Ngozi. Her makeup was smeared artfully, her eyes wide and terrified. When she saw me, she let out a small sob and buried her face in the blanket. The performance was Oscar-worthy. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't watched the footage myself, I might have believed her too. Mama rushed to me, grabbing my arms, her voice breaking. Amara, thank God you're back. I tried to call you. Something terrible has happened. That man you married, he attacked Ngozi. Your own sister. In your own house. How could you bring such a person into our family? I looked at my mother, this woman who raised me, who had chosen Ngozi over me 1,000 times, who was doing it again right now without even hearing the full story. And I felt something inside me harden. I gently removed her hands from my arms and walked past her into the living room. I set my laptop bag down on the coffee table and looked around at everyone gathered there. What would you do in this moment? Knowing you had the truth, but watching your entire family turn against your husband? Let me know in the comments. I said, my voice calmer than I felt. I think everyone should sit down. We need to talk about what really happened tonight. The living room of my home had never felt so hostile. The air was thick with accusation and anger, and every eye was on me as I stood there with my laptop bag, looking at the chaos my sister had created in just a few hours. Mama rushed toward me again, her face desperate. Amara, did you hear what I said? Chidi attacked Ngozi. We need to call the police right now. That man is dangerous. You're not safe here. I looked past her to where Ngozi sat in the armchair. And I have to give her credit, she had committed fully to the role. Her nightgown, that sheer white thing I'd seen her wearing on camera, was now artfully torn at the shoulder. She must have done it herself after locking herself in her room. Her makeup was smeared down her face in black streaks, mascara mixing with tears. Real tears, too. She was actually crying. Her hair was disheveled, no longer the carefully styled waves I'd seen earlier. She'd even managed to create a small red mark on her neck, probably from pinching herself. The girl had thought of everything. She looked up at me through her tears, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Calculation. She was watching me, trying to gauge my reaction, trying to figure out how to play this. Papa D stood near the window, his arms crossed, his face grave. My father had always been the more rational one, slower to judge, but even he looked troubled. He kept glancing between Chidi and Ngozi, trying to piece together what could have happened. Auntie Ifunanya sat on the arm of the sofa, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She was my father's sister, a retired headmistress who had spent 40 years reading students like books. She was watching me with intense curiosity, and I could tell she'd already noticed something the others hadn't. I wasn't crying. I wasn't hysterical. I wasn't rushing to my sister's side or demanding answers from my husband. I was calm.
Too calm.
Obiora stood next to Chidi like a guardian, one hand on his brother's shoulder. Obiora was 38, a successful lawyer who'd built his career on staying composed in crisis. But even he looked shaken. His brother was being accused of one of the worst crimes imaginable, and the court of family opinion had already found him guilty.
And Chidi.
My beautiful, kind husband sat on our sofa looking like someone had reached inside his chest and crushed his heart. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. His hands were trembling. When our eyes met, I saw such desperate hope there, such faith that I would make this right, that it nearly broke me.
Mama grabbed my arm again, harder this time.
Amara, why are you just standing there? Say something. Your sister was attacked in your own home. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm for the second time. Mama, I need you to let me handle this. Handle this? Handle this? There's nothing to handle. We need to call the police. This man needs to be arrested. Ngozi let out a loud sob from her chair, drawing everyone's attention. Please, Mama, I just want to forget it happened. I don't want to cause trouble for Amara. This is my fault. I should have seen the signs. I should have been more careful. Oh, she was good. She was very good. Playing the martyr, the selfless sister who didn't want to destroy her sibling's marriage despite being attacked. It was a masterful performance. I walked slowly across the room toward Ngozi. Everyone watched me, the silence broken only by her soft crying. I knelt down beside her chair and took her hand. It was cold and slightly clammy. She looked at me with those wide, tearful eyes, and I saw the flicker of uncertainty there. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected me to either believe her or to be conflicted, torn between my husband and my sister. She hadn't expected calm. Ngozi, I said softly, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning. Every detail. She glanced at Mama, who nodded encouragingly, then back at me. Her voice came out small and broken. I don't want to talk about it, Amara. It's too painful. I know, sweetheart. But we need to understand what happened.
Please.
Tell us everything. Mama was nodding vigorously. Yes, Ngozi. Tell her. Tell everyone what that monster did to you. Chidi flinched at the word monster. Obiora's hand tightened on his shoulder. Ngozi took a shaky breath and began her story. I had a nightmare. A terrible nightmare about our childhood, about when Papa got sick that time, remember? I woke up terrified and I couldn't calm down. I didn't want to bother anyone, but I was so scared. She was setting the scene beautifully, making herself sympathetic, vulnerable. I thought maybe I could just sleep on the couch, but then I heard sounds from your bedroom. I thought maybe you'd come back early, Amara. I thought maybe you could comfort me. So I knocked on the door.
Lies.
All lies. I'd watched her prepare for at least an hour, putting on makeup, styling her hair, choosing that sheer nightgown. There was no nightmare. There was no fear. There was only calculation and seduction. Chidi told me to come in. He was in bed, and he smiled at me in this way that made me uncomfortable. But I thought I was being paranoid, you know?
He's my brother-in-law.
I trusted him. Chidi made a sound of protest, but Obiora squeezed his shoulder, silently telling him to stay quiet. I told him about my nightmare, and he said I could sit on the bed. He seemed so kind at first. But then, her voice broke convincingly. Then he started saying things. Inappropriate things. About how I was beautiful. About how he'd noticed me. He touched my arm. I kept my face neutral, kept holding her hand. What did he say exactly? What were his words? She looked confused for a moment, caught off guard by the question. I don't remember exactly. I was so scared. He said I was attractive, that he'd been wanting to tell me. And then what happened? He grabbed me, pulled me onto the bed. I tried to push him away, but he's so much stronger than me. He held me down and she dissolved into sobs, burying her face in her hands. Mama let out a wail and rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around Ngozi. My baby. My poor baby. Amara, how can you sit there so calmly? Don't you care what happened to your sister? Papa Adiz spoke for the first time, his voice heavy. Amara, these are serious accusations. We need to address this properly. Perhaps we should call the authorities. Auntie Ifunanya was still watching me with those keen eyes. She spoke quietly. Amara, why did you come back early from Abuja? Ngozi said this just happened an hour ago. You couldn't have known. Smart woman. She'd caught the timeline inconsistency immediately. I stood up, still holding Ngozi's hand, looking down at my sister. Actually, Auntie, I never went to Abuja. I've been in Lagos the whole time. The room went very still. Ngozi's eyes widened, her hand tensing in mine. Mama looked confused.
What?
What are you talking about? You left this morning for your conference. I told everyone I was going to Abuja, but I actually stayed at a hotel here in Lagos. I never left the city. Chidi was staring at me, understanding beginning to dawn on his face. Obiora's expression had shifted from defensive to intensely interested. Ngozi tried to pull her hand away from mine, but I held it gently but firmly. Amara, I don't understand. Why would you lie about going to Abuja? I'll explain in a moment. But first, I need you to tell your story again. For everyone here. Some of the details were a bit unclear. She glanced nervously at Mama. I already told you what happened. Why do I have to repeat it? It's traumatic enough to say it once. I know, and I'm sorry. But this is important. You said Chidi was in bed when you knocked on the door. What was he wearing? His pajamas, I think. Blue pajamas. That was correct. Point for Ngozi for paying attention. And you said he invited you in?
Yes.
He told me to come in.
Lie.
I'd watched him look shocked when she entered. And he commented on your appearance? What were you wearing, Ngozi? She hesitated. My nightgown. The pink one. Another lie. It was white, sheer white. Was she trying to make it sound more modest? The pink one. I repeated. Are you sure?
Yes.
The pink one. Why does it matter what I was wearing? Mama jumped in, her voice rising. It doesn't matter what she was wearing. Nothing justifies what he did. Amara, I cannot believe you're interrogating your sister like she's the criminal here. I ignored Mama and kept my eyes on Ngozi. You said he grabbed you and pulled you onto the bed. Where exactly?
Show me.
Use the sofa. Amara, this is ridiculous. Mama protested, but Papa Dees held up his hand.
No.
Let Amara ask her questions. Ngozi, if you can, please show us. Ngozi stood up shakily and moved to the sofa. She positioned herself at one end. I was sitting here on the edge of the bed, and he was lying here. She pointed to where Chidi was sitting. Chidi immediately stood up and moved away, looking like he wanted to disappear. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, like this. She held out her arm demonstratively, and then he pulled me down. I tried to scream, but he put his hand over my mouth. New detail. She hadn't mentioned that before. He put his hand over your mouth? I asked.
Yes.
I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to suffocate. And this mark on your neck, is that from him grabbing you? She touched the red mark self-consciously.
Yes.
He grabbed my neck when I tried to get away.
I see.
And how did you finally escape?
I
bit his hand. When he pulled back, I ran. I locked myself in my room and called Mama. Mama was nodding along, tears streaming down her face. My poor baby. My poor sweet girl. I walked over to my laptop bag and pulled out my computer. I think everyone should sit down. I have something important to show you all. Ngozi's face changed. The color drained from her cheeks. What? What do you mean? Sit down, Ngozi. My voice was steel now, the gentleness gone. Chidi's face had transformed. He understood. He knew I had the footage. His eyes filled with tears of relief. Mama was getting angry now. Amara, what is this? Some kind of game? Your sister has been traumatized, and you're playing with computers? Papa Dees moved closer. Amara, what do you have to show us? I opened my laptop and pulled up the video file. My hands were steady now, purpose driving out anxiety. Before I supposedly left for Abuja, I installed a security camera in our bedroom. The room exploded. Mama's voice was shrill. You did what? You were spying on your own sister? In her private moments? How could you violate her privacy like that? Ngozi stood up from the sofa, her whole body trembling. But it wasn't fear of being attacked I saw in her eyes now. It was fear of being caught. Amara, that's illegal. You can't record people without their consent. Obiora spoke up, his lawyer voice calm and authoritative. Actually, in Nigeria, you can record in your own home, especially in your own bedroom. It's perfectly legal. Auntie Ifeanyi was leaning forward now, her eyes sharp. Amara, why did you install a camera? I looked at my aunt, this woman who had always seen through nonsense, who had called out bad behavior in her students for 4 decades. Because I suspected that something might happen. I suspected that Ngozi might try something with my husband when she thought I was gone. Mama gasped like I'd slapped her. How dare you? How dare you accuse Ngozi of such a thing? Your sister is the victim here? Is she? I turned the laptop screen so everyone could see it. Then let's watch what really happened tonight. Let's see who the real victim is. Ngozi lunged forward, trying to grab the laptop.
No.
You can't. That's a violation. You have no right. Obiora stepped between her and me, his tall frame blocking her access. If you have nothing to hide, Ngozi, then there's no reason not to watch it. Papa Adi's voice was quiet but firm. Amara, play the video. Papa, no. Ngozi was begging now, all pretense of the traumatized victim evaporating. Please, don't let her do this. She's trying to humiliate me. Mama rushed to Ngozi's side. Don't worry, my baby. Whatever is on that video, we'll get through this together. Your sister has clearly lost her mind. I looked at Ngozi, really looked at her. My sister. My blood. The little girl I used to protect from bullies at school. The teenager I helped with her homework. The young woman I'd given money to when she was broke. And now this. A person willing to destroy an innocent man to cover her own shame. Sit down, Ngozi, I said quietly. Everyone needs to see the truth. Auntie Ifeanyi spoke up. If Ngozi's story is true, the video will confirm it. If Chidi attacked her as she claims, we'll all see it and take appropriate action. There's no reason to be afraid of the truth. Ngozi looked trapped, her eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. She tried one more time. Amara, please. You're my sister.
Don't do this to me.
I'm begging you. And there it was. Not don't do this to us or don't do this to the family.
Don't do this to me.
Because she knew. She knew exactly what was on that video. I pressed play. The footage began with the timestamp in the corner, 9:07 p.m. Our bedroom appeared on screen, peaceful and quiet. Chidi was in bed, reading his book, looking relaxed in his blue pajamas, exactly as Ngozi had described. For a moment, nothing happened, and I could feel everyone leaning in, watching intently. Then the bedroom door opened, and Ngozi walked in. Mama gasped. Papa Adi's jaw tightened. Auntie Ifeanyi leaned back with a knowing expression. Because on that screen, clear as day, was my sister in a sheer white nightgown that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. Not pink, not modest. White and completely transparent. Her hair perfectly styled. Her makeup dramatic and seductive. This was not a woman who'd woken from a nightmare. This was a woman on a mission. On screen, Chidi's head snapped up from his book. His face registered shock, then immediate discomfort. He sat up straighter, pulling the covers higher. There was no audio, but we could see their mouths moving. Chidi was clearly asking her something, probably what she was doing there. Ngozi was moving closer to the bed, slowly, her hips swaying. Mama's hand was over her mouth. She was shaking her head, but she couldn't look away from the screen. On the video, Ngozi sat on the edge of the bed. Chidi was shaking his head firmly, pointing toward the door. He was telling her to leave. Anyone could see that. Ngozi started crying on screen, her hands gesturing emotionally. She was saying something, appealing to him. Chidi's expression softened slightly. The compassionate man, he was unable to completely ignore someone in distress. He was talking to her, probably trying to comfort her, but maintaining clear distance. Then Ngozi reached out and touched his arm. Chidi physically recoiled, pulling his arm away from her touch. He was talking more firmly now, still pointing at the door. And then came the moment that destroyed her entire story. Ngozi lunged at him, throwing herself at my husband with such force that he barely had time to react. She wrapped her arms around his neck, trying to press her lips against his, her nearly naked body pressing against him. In the living room, Mama let out a strangled sound. Papa Adiz closed his eyes. On screen, Chidi grabbed Ngozi's arms and physically pushed her away from him. She stumbled backward, but she didn't run. She didn't scream. She came at him again, trying to touch his chest, his face, grabbing at his shirt. Chidi stood up from the bed, backing away, holding his hands up. His mouth was moving rapidly, clearly telling her to stop, to leave. His face showed disgust and anger. Ngozi kept pursuing him, trying to touch him, her expression desperate now. She grabbed his wrist, and he yanked it away, pointing at the door with such force his whole arm shook. And then we all watched as Ngozi's face transformed. The seduction dropped away. The desperation vanished. What replaced it was cold, calculating rage. She stared at Chidi for several seconds, and we could all see her making a decision. She took 2 steps back. Her face shifted again, this time into an expression of terror. She raised her hands as if protecting herself from an attacker, and then she turned and ran out of the bedroom. The video ended there, but we all knew what came next. The screaming, the phone calls, the lies. The living room was completely silent. I turned to look at Ngozi. She was standing frozen, her face ashen, tears streaming down her cheeks. But these weren't the calculated tears from before. These were tears of shame and humiliation. Mama was sitting on the arm of the chair, her hands over her face, her whole body shaking. When she finally looked up, she wasn't looking at me or at Chidi. She was staring at Ngozi with an expression I'd never seen before. Betrayal, disappointment, disgust. Papa Adiz spoke first, his voice heavy with sadness. Ngozi, is this true? Did you fabricate this entire story? Ngozi tried one last time, her voice desperate. That video is fake. She edited it. She's trying to frame me because she's always been jealous of me. But it was weak, and everyone knew it. Obiora pulled out his phone. I can have a forensic analyst examine the video if needed. Check the metadata. Verify it hasn't been edited. Would you like me to do that, Ngozi? She didn't answer. She just stood there, trapped by the truth. Auntie Ifinanya stood up and walked over to Ngozi. She didn't touch her, just looked at her with those sharp, disappointed eyes. Child, I've spent 40 years watching young people lie to me. I've seen every excuse, every manipulation, every crocodile tear. But this, she gestured at the laptop. This is something else entirely. You tried to destroy that man's life. Do you understand that? If Amara hadn't had that camera, if she hadn't been smart enough to protect her husband, you would have branded him a rapist. The police could have been called. His reputation would have been destroyed. His career ruined. His life over. For what? Because he rejected you. Before we go any further, if this story is showing you the importance of protecting yourself and trusting your instincts, please hit that subscribe button. You need to see how this ends. Ngozi crumpled to the floor, sobbing. Not the fake sobs from before, but real ones. The sound of someone whose mask had been completely torn away. Mama finally spoke, her voice broken. Ngozi, how could you? How could you do such a thing? And my sister, my manipulative, jealous, destructive sister, looked up at our mother and said the words that had been driving her all along. Because she has everything, Mama. Everything. The perfect job, the perfect husband, the perfect life. What do I have? Nothing. I have nothing. And when I finally found someone who was kind to me, who was handsome and successful, he wouldn't even look at me. He only saw her. It's always her. Always Amara. Why does she get everything and I get nothing? The truth, raw and ugly, spilled out of her in a torrent. This wasn't about desire. It wasn't even really about Chidi. This was about a lifetime of jealousy, of feeling second best, of watching her older sister succeed while she failed, and being unable to accept responsibility for her own choices. Papa Adiz's voice was quiet but sharp. You get nothing, Ngozi, because you have never worked for anything. Your mother and I spoiled you, gave you every advantage, and you squandered it all. Amara has what she has because she earned it. And instead of learning from her example, you chose to try to tear her down. Mama was crying now, her face in her hands. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother truly see Ngozi for who she was. The favorite child, the baby, had just revealed herself to be a monster of their own making. I closed my laptop and looked around the room. Chidi was sitting back down on the sofa, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent tears. The trauma of being falsely accused, of having his character questioned by people he loved, would take time to heal. Obiora stood beside him, a protective hand on his shoulder, his lawyer's face grim with the knowledge of what could have happened if there had been no camera, no evidence. And my family, fractured perhaps beyond repair, sat in the wreckage of Ngozi's lies. "I want her out of my house," I said quietly. "Tonight." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "I want her out of my house. Tonight." But before anyone could respond, I realized something. I had made a critical error. In my anger and my need to protect Chidi, I had forgotten one crucial detail about the camera I'd installed. The model I'd purchased, the one disguised as a phone charger, didn't just record video. It had audio capabilities too. I'd been so focused on the visual evidence that I hadn't even checked if the audio had recorded. My hands trembling slightly, I reopened my laptop. Everyone watched me in silence. Even Ngozi's sobs had quieted to small hiccups. I pulled up the video file again and checked the audio settings. My heart nearly stopped. There was audio.
Clear audio.
I looked up at the room, at all these faces I'd known my whole life. "I need to show you something else." The camera recorded sound too. "I think everyone needs to hear exactly what was said." Ngozi's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fresh terror.
No.
"Amara, please. Please don't." But Mama, still reeling from what she'd already seen, spoke with a voice I'd never heard from her before. Hard. Demanding. "Play it, Amara. Play everything." I restarted the video from the beginning, this time with the volume turned up high. The first sounds were peaceful. The quiet rustling of Chidi turning pages in his book. The distant hum of the air conditioning. Normal bedroom sounds on a normal evening. Then came the sound of the door opening. Chidi's voice, surprised and uncomfortable. "Ngozi, what are you doing?" "It's late." Ngozi's voice, sultry and intentional. Nothing like the scared little girl she'd pretended to be. "I couldn't sleep, brother. I kept thinking about you." The room went deathly silent. Mama's hand flew to her mouth again. Chidi's voice firmer now. "You should go back to your room, Ngozi. This isn't appropriate." "Why not?" Ngozi's voice was closer now. We could hear her moving across the room. "Amara's not here. It's just us. Don't you ever think about me, Chidi?" "I think about you all the time." Papa D's made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. Chidi's voice was strained, uncomfortable. "Ngozi, you need to leave."
Right now.
"I'm going to call Amara." "No." Ngozi's voice turned pleading, but it was manipulative pleading. We could all hear it now. "Please don't call her. I just need someone to talk to. I'm so alone, Chidi. So lonely. Don't you ever feel lonely? I'm married to your sister. I'm never lonely. Ngozi, I'm serious. You need to go." There was a sound of movement, fabric rustling. Ngozi's voice came again, this time with fake tears coating every word. "Nobody wants me. Nobody has ever wanted me. I'm worthless. Maybe everyone would be better off if I wasn't here." We could hear Chidi sigh, the sound of someone being emotionally manipulated against their better judgment. "Ngozi, that's not true. You're not worthless. But you need to talk to someone about these feelings. A professional. Not me. Not like this." "You're so kind." Her voice had shifted again, back to sultry. "That's what I love about you. You're always so kind to me." "I'm kind to everyone. It doesn't mean anything beyond basic human decency. Ngozi, please." Then came the sound that made everyone in the living room flinch. A sudden movement, a gasp from Chidi, the sound of struggle. Chidi's voice, loud and firm. "No. Ngozi, stop. What are you doing?" Ngozi's voice, breathless. "Don't fight it, Chidi. I know you want this. I've seen how you look at me. I have never looked at you that way. Let go of me." The sound of more struggle, something hitting the floor, maybe a book. Chidi's voice, angry now. "I said a no. This is wrong, Ngozi. You need to stop right now. Just give me a chance. Just one chance. I can make you happy. Happier than she does. I love Amara. I would never betray her. Especially not with you. Get away from me. A sound of pushing, Ngozi making a small cry. Footsteps. You're going to regret this. Ngozi's voice, no longer seductive, no longer pleading, but filled with cold venom. You're going to regret rejecting me. The only thing I regret is that Amara brought you into our home.
Get out.
Get out of my room. Footsteps running.
The door slamming.
Then silence for about 30 seconds. We could hear Chidi's heavy breathing, the sound of him probably sitting back down on the bed, maybe his head in his hands. Then, faintly, from down the hall, we heard Ngozi's voice. She must have left her door open because the camera picked it up clearly enough. Ngozi, no longer crying, her voice calculating and cold as ice. Okay, I need to think.
He rejected me.
The bastard actually rejected me. After everything. After all the effort. A pause. The sound of pacing. He'll tell Amara. He'll tell her everything. Unless I tell them first. Unless I make myself the victim. More pacing. We could almost hear her mind working. Mama will believe me. She always believes me. Papa will too, eventually. I just need to make it convincing. I just need to. The sound of a phone dialing. Then Mama's voice through the phone. Ngozi? Baby, what's wrong? It's late. And then came the performance. Ngozi's voice transformed into hysterical sobbing, so convincing that if we hadn't just heard her calculating moments before, we might have believed it ourselves. Mama, please, you need to come.
Please.
Something terrible happened. Chidi, he attacked me. Mama, I'm so scared. Please come now. Please. Mama's voice through the phone, alarmed. What? What do you mean attacked you? Ngozi, what happened? He tried to. Mama, he tried to force himself on me. I said no. I fought him off, but Mama, I'm terrified. What if he tries again? What if he hurts me? Please come. I'm coming right now. Stay in your room and lock the door. I'm calling your father. We're coming, baby. The call ended. Then silence. And then, chillingly, we heard Ngozi's voice one more time, cold and satisfied. Perfect. I stopped the video. The living room was so quiet you could hear everyone breathing. The audio had revealed everything. Not just what happened in the bedroom, but what happened after. The calculated decision to lie. The cold manipulation. The false accusation delivered with Oscar-worthy tears while, moments before, she'd been calmly plotting her revenge. Mama Adiz looked like she was going to be sick. All the color had drained from her face. She was staring at Ngozi like she was looking at a stranger. Papa Adiz had tears running down his face. Silent tears of a father watching his daughter reveal herself to be someone he didn't recognize. Auntie Ifeanyi had her hand over her heart, her eyes closed, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer. Obiora had his phone out. I realized he'd been recording the playback. As a lawyer, he understood the importance of documentation. He looked at his brother with such relief, but also such sadness for what Chidi had endured. And Chidi. My husband sat on that sofa with tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. He was vindicated, proven innocent beyond any shadow of doubt. But the trauma of being falsely accused, of being called a rapist by people he loved, of having his character assassinated, that trauma was written all over his face. I looked at my sister. She had collapsed completely onto the floor, no longer even trying to maintain any dignity. She knew it was over. The audio had destroyed any possible defense she could have mounted. I stood up and walked to the center of the room, my voice steady, but filled with more pain than I'd ever felt in my life. Ngozi, you tried to destroy my marriage. You tried to destroy an innocent man's life. You were willing to let him be arrested, prosecuted, imprisoned, branded as a rapist for the rest of his life. All because he rejected you. Ngozi's head snapped up, and I saw desperation in her eyes. She was scrambling for any lifeline, any possible way to salvage this. That video is edited.
She faked it.
Amara is good with computers. She could have manipulated the audio, put words in my mouth. You can't trust it. But her voice lacked conviction. Even she didn't believe what she was saying. Obiora stepped forward, his lawyer voice calm and authoritative. Ngozi, I'd like to examine the video, files metadata. As an officer of the court, I can verify whether it's been edited or manipulated in any way. May I, Amara? I handed him my laptop without hesitation. He pulled out a small device from his bag, something he apparently carried for work, and connected it to my computer. His fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up information that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant everything to him. After a few minutes of tense silence, Obiora looked up. He addressed the room, but his eyes were on Ngozi. The metadata shows this file was created tonight at the timestamps indicated. There are no signs of editing, no splice marks in the audio, no manipulation of the video. The file properties show it was recorded in one continuous take and downloaded directly from a cloud storage service. This is authentic, unedited footage. Ngozi tried one more time, her voice rising to a scream. He's lying. He's Chidi's brother. Of course he's going to lie for him. You can't trust him. Papa Adi's voice cut through her hysteria like a knife. Obiora is a respected lawyer who has built his entire career on integrity. He would not perjure himself for anyone, not even his brother. I trust his assessment. He turned to look at Ngozi, and I saw something in my father's eyes I'd never seen before when he looked at her. Disappointment, so deep it was almost hatred. Ngozi, explain yourself. Explain to me how you could do such a thing. Mama still hadn't spoken. She was sitting completely still, staring at nothing, her mind probably replaying every time she'd believed in Ngozi's lies over the years. Every time she'd taken her side against me, against reality. Ngozi looked at Papa, then at Mama, then around the room at all these faces that had once looked at her with love and indulgence. She saw only judgment now, only disgust, and something in her snapped. She didn't break down with remorse. She didn't apologize or beg for forgiveness. Instead, she did what she always did when cornered. She attacked. She got to her feet, her face twisted with rage, and screamed. You want to know why? You really want to know why? Because I'm sick of it. Sick of watching her get everything while I get nothing. Sick of being compared to perfect Amara. Smart Amara. Successful Amara. Amara, who can do no wrong. Her voice was shrill, years of resentment pouring out. My whole life, it's been Amara this, Amara that. When she got good grades, you threw her a party. When I got good grades, you said that's nice, dear. When she got into university, you told everyone. When I got in, you barely noticed. She gets the tech job, the beautiful house, the perfect husband, and what do I get? Nothing. Scraps. Hand-me-downs. Her charity. Mama found her voice finally, small and broken. Ngozi, that's not true. We loved you. We gave you everything. You gave me things, Mama. But you gave her your respect. Do you know what it's like to always be second? To always be the disappointing one? To watch your older sister succeed at everything while you fail at everything. I felt something crack in my chest. For all her manipulation, for all her lies, there was real pain in those words. Pain I'd never fully understood because I'd been too busy being the successful one to notice what it was doing to her. But then she turned those rage-filled eyes on me, and any sympathy I might have felt evaporated. And then you bring him home. This perfect man with his perfect job and his perfect manners, and I think, finally, someone who might see me. Someone who might choose me over you for once. But no! Even when I threw myself at him, even when I made it so obvious, he still only wanted you. Always you. So, you decided to take what was mine? My voice was quiet, but it cut through her ranting. You decided that if you couldn't have him, you destroy him? Destroy both of us. Yes. She screamed it, beyond caring now.
Yes.
If I can't have him, why should you? Why should you get to keep your perfect marriage while I have nothing? I wanted to ruin it. I wanted to watch you suffer for once. I wanted everyone to see that perfect Chidi wasn't so perfect, that your marriage wasn't so great. The room erupted. Auntie Ifunanya stood up, her voice sharp and cutting. You wicked child. You would destroy an innocent man's life out of jealousy? You would send him to prison, brand him a rapist, ruin his career, all because you wanted what your sister had? That's not pain. That's evil. Papa Adi's voice was like thunder. Ngozi, I have never been so ashamed of you in my life. Your mother and I raised you better than this. We taught you right from wrong. What you did tonight, what you tried to do, is unforgivable. But it was Mama's voice that finally broke through Ngozi's rage. Small, devastated, barely above a whisper. I did this to you. Everyone turned to look at Mama. She was crying, her whole body shaking. I did this, she repeated, looking at Ngozi. I spoiled you. I made excuses for you. Every time you did something wrong, I blamed someone else. When you destroyed Amara's school project, I made her apologize. When you failed your exams, I blamed the teachers. When you got fired, I blamed your boss. I never made you take responsibility for anything. I created a monster and called it love. She turned to look at me, and I saw genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time in my life. Amara, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I favored her because she reminded me of myself at that age, wild and rebellious, and I thought if I just loved her enough, guided her gently enough, she'd grow out of it. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. I didn't guide her. I enabled her. And I dismissed you, my responsible daughter, because you didn't need me the same way.
But you did need me.
You needed a mother who saw you, who celebrated you, who protected you. And instead, I chose her over you, again and again. She looked at Chidi, fresh tears spilling down her face.
And you?
I called you a monster. I believed the worst of you without question, because that's what I've always done, believed Ngozi without question. I didn't even give you a chance to defend yourself. I am so deeply sorry. Chidi nodded, but didn't speak. What could he say? The apology didn't undo the trauma, didn't erase the last few hours of being called a rapist by his mother-in-law. The room fell into heavy silence, broken only by Mama's quiet crying and Ngozi's angry breathing. Auntie Ifunanya looked at me. What do you want to do, Amara? This is your home. These are your decisions to make. I looked at Ngozi, really looked at her.
My sister. For years younger than me.
The little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. The teenager I helped with her homework. The young woman I gave money to when she was broke. And now this. A person so consumed by jealousy and entitlement that she tried to destroy an innocent man's life. Could I forgive her? Maybe someday, years from now, after therapy and growth and genuine remorse. But that forgiveness would be for me, not for her. To release the burden of this betrayal. It wouldn't mean forgetting. It wouldn't mean trusting her ever again. I want her out of my house, I said, my voice steady and final.
Tonight. Right now.
Pack your things and leave. Ngozi's eyes widened. Amara, please.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just angry. Please don't throw me out. I have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you tried to destroy my husband. But I'm your sister. Your blood. You can't just abandon me. You abandoned yourself when you made the choice to do what you did. Blood doesn't give you the right to destroy people. Family doesn't mean accepting abuse. Papa Adiz stood up. I'll take her home with us tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what comes next. But Amara is right. You cannot stay here. Ngozi turned to Mama, desperate for her usual savior to rescue her one more time. Mama, please. Tell her she's being too harsh. Tell her to forgive me. Mama, please.
But Mama just shook her head, crying. No, baby. Not this time.
This time, you have to face the consequences of your actions. I won't save you from this. I can't. The reality of her situation finally seemed to hit Ngozi. No one was going to rescue her. No one was going to make excuses for her. She was truly alone with the consequences of her choices for the first time in her life. Obiora spoke up, his lawyer voice firm. Ngozi, I want to be very clear about something. What you did tonight constitutes several crimes under Nigerian law. filing a false police report, defamation of character, potentially even attempted fraud. My brother would be well within his rights to press charges against you. Ngozi's face went white. You wouldn't. Chidi, please, you wouldn't do that to me. All eyes turned to Chidi. He'd been silent through most of this, processing everything, dealing with his own trauma. Now he looked at Ngozi with an expression I'd never seen on his gentle face before. Not hatred, but something close to it. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough from crying but firm. You tried to have me arrested for rape, Ngozi. You called my mother, my brother, our friends, and told them I was a rapist. Do you understand what that would have done to me? Even if I'd been proven innocent eventually, people would always wonder. There would always be whispers. My career would have been destroyed. My reputation ruined. My life over. And you did it without hesitation, without remorse, because I wouldn't cheat on my wife with you. He stood up, and even though he'd been crying, even though he was traumatized, he looked strong. I'm not going to press charges. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I don't want to spend the next year of my life in court reliving this nightmare. But if you ever come near me or Amara again, if you ever try to contact us, if you ever spread any more lies about me, I will pursue every legal avenue available. Do you understand? Ngozi nodded, unable to speak. Now get out of my house. Papa Adiz took Ngozi by the arm.
Come.
Let's get your things. They left the living room, heading toward the guest room where Ngozi had been staying. We could hear drawers opening, things being thrown into suitcases, Ngozi crying. Mama sat in her chair, looking 10 years older than she had when she arrived. Auntie Ifunanya sat beside her, a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. Obiora approached Chidi and me. I recorded the audio playback on my phone. I also took photos of the metadata analysis, just in case. It's always good to have backup documentation. I thanked him, and he pulled his brother into a tight hug. Chidi broke down completely then, all the fear and trauma and relief pouring out of him. Obiora just held him, letting him cry. After about 10 minutes, Papa Adiz came back, carrying 2 suitcases. Ngozi trailed behind him, her eyes red and swollen, her earlier rage replaced by numb shock. At the door, she paused and looked at me one last time. I really am sorry, Amara. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I looked at my sister and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love. Just emptiness where she used to be. Goodbye, Ngozi. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Because goodbye meant permanent. It meant the end of whatever relationship we'd had. It meant I was closing the door on her permanently. Papa opened the front door, and they walked out into the Lagos night. Mama slowly got to her feet, looking at me with so much regret and sorrow. Amara, I know I don't deserve it, but I hope someday you can forgive me too. Not for Ngozi's actions, but for mine. For all the years I chose her over you. For not protecting you the way a mother should. I nodded but didn't say anything. That forgiveness would take time too. After Mama and Auntie Ifunanya left, it was just me, Chidi, and Obiora in the living room. The house felt different, emptier but also cleaner, like a poison had been extracted. Obiora said his goodbyes, reminding us to call him if we needed anything, and then he too was gone. Finally, it was just my husband and me in our home. Chidi looked at me, his eyes still red, his face exhausted. You saved me. If you hadn't had that camera, if you hadn't trusted your instincts, I would be. But I did. I interrupted gently. And you're safe. We're safe. He pulled me into his arms, and we stood there in our living room, holding each other, both of us crying now. Crying for the trauma we'd endured, for the family relationships that had been destroyed, for the innocence we'd lost. If you've made it this far in this story, please hit that subscribe button, because the ending will show you how we healed and what lessons we learned from this nightmare. But as we stood there holding each other, I realized something important. Trust your instincts. Protect the people you love. And never, ever let anyone gaslight you into doubting what you know is true. The worst was over. Now, we just had to heal. The hours after Ngozi left our house felt surreal, like we were all moving through water, every action slow and heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Chidi and I stood in our living room, holding each other, neither of us quite ready to let go. The silence was broken only by our breathing and the distant sounds of Lagos at night filtering through the windows. Eventually, we pulled apart. Chidi looked at me with red, exhausted eyes and said he needed to shower, needed to wash this entire night off his skin. I understood. I told him I'd make us some tea, something my grandmother used to do whenever there was trouble in the family.
Hot tea and thyme, she'd say.
That's what you need after a crisis. I was in the kitchen, water boiling on the stove, when my phone rang. It was Papa. I almost didn't answer, still processing everything, but something made me pick up. His voice was heavy, aged by the night's events. Amara, we're home. Ngozi is in her old room. Your mother is. He paused, searching for words. Your mother is devastated. Not just by what Ngozi did, but by her own role in creating this situation. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Papa continued. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you want us to bring Ngozi back tomorrow? To apologize properly to Chidi's face? I know she gave you a half-hearted apology at the door, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't real. I thought about it. Did Chidi need to hear Ngozi apologize? Would it help him heal, or would it just reopen the wound? Let me talk to Chidi. I told Papa. I'll call you back. I found my husband sitting on the edge of our bed, freshly showered, staring at nothing. I sat beside him and took his hand. It was still trembling slightly. Papa wants to know if we want Ngozi to come back tomorrow to apologize to you properly. What do you think? Chidi was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know if I can look at her again without feeling sick. But maybe I need to. Maybe I need to hear her actually say the words, take responsibility for what she tried to do to me. Not for her benefit, but for mine. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. Closure. Acknowledgement of harm. Sometimes victims need to hear their abusers admit what they did, need to look them in the eye when they do it. I called Papa back and told him yes, bring her tomorrow afternoon. But this time, it would be on our terms, in our home, with our rules. The next day arrived too quickly. Neither Chidi nor I had slept well. We'd spent most of the night talking, processing, him sharing things he'd been holding back about how uncomfortable Ngozi had made him feel even before that night. The small comments, the looks, the touches that lingered too long. He'd downplayed it all, not wanting to cause family drama, and now he was angry at himself for not being more forceful in setting boundaries. I reassured him that none of this was his fault. He'd been kind, which is who he is. He tried to handle it delicately out of respect for me and my family. Ngozi had weaponized his kindness and used it against him. That was on her, not him. At 2 p.m, there was a knock on our door. I opened it to find Papa, Mama, and Ngozi standing on our doorstep. Ngozi looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her skin blotchy, her whole demeanor defeated. Good, I thought coldly. She should look like someone who'd done something unforgivable. Mama looked even worse. She'd aged overnight, new lines etched into her face, her eyes haunted by guilt and regret. I let them in without a word and led them to the living room where Chidi was waiting, Obiora beside him. I'd asked Obiora to come too, both as support for Chidi and as a witness to whatever was about to happen. Papa spoke first, his voice formal and grave. Chidi, we've come so that Ngozi can apologize to you properly for what she did. Ngozi. Ngozi stood there, her head down, her hands clasped in front of her. For a long moment she said nothing. Then Papa's voice came again, sharper this time.
Ngozi. Now.
She raised her head and looked at Chidi. There was shame in her eyes, but also resentment. She was doing this because she had to, not because she wanted to. Chidi, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for trying to seduce you. I'm sorry for lying about you attacking me. I'm sorry for calling your mother and brother and telling them you were a rapist. I'm sorry for trying to destroy your reputation and your marriage. The words came out flat, rehearsed, like she'd practiced them in the car on the way over. Chidi looked at her, his face unreadable. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught? The question hung in the air like a blade. Ngozi's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw anger flash across her face. Then she controlled it, forced her expression back to contrite. I'm sorry I did it. I was wrong. I was jealous and angry, and I acted terribly. I hurt you, and I hurt Amara, and I hurt our whole family. You didn't just hurt us, Chidi said quietly. You tried to destroy my life. Do you understand that? You were willing to have me arrested, prosecuted, possibly imprisoned for a crime I didn't commit. You were willing to brand me as a rapist for the rest of my life. People who are accused of rape, even when they're proven innocent, never fully recover. There's always doubt, always whispers. You would have taken everything from me. My career, my reputation, my freedom, my marriage. Everything. Because I wouldn't cheat on my wife with you. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, I thought. But I wasn't sure if they were tears of remorse or tears of self-pity. I know, she whispered. I know what I almost did. And I have to live with that. Obiora spoke up, his lawyer voice measured. Chidi, I want to remind you that you have legal options here. What Ngozi did constitutes defamation of character at minimum. The false accusation of rape, the phone calls to family members spreading that lie, it's all actionable. You could press charges. You could sue for damages. You would very likely win. Chidi looked at his brother, then back at Ngozi. I know, but I'm not going to do that. Ngozi's head snapped up, surprise and relief flooding her face. I'm not doing it for you, Chidi continued, his voice hard. I'm doing it for me. I don't want to spend months or years in court reliving this nightmare. I don't want to give you any more of my time, my energy, my peace of mind. I just want you gone from my life. Completely. Forever. He stood up, and Ngozi instinctively took a step back. But I need you to understand something, Chidi said, moving closer but maintaining distance. If you ever speak my name again, if you ever tell anyone any version of your lie, if you ever come near me or Amara, I will pursue every legal avenue available. I will press charges. I will sue you. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. Do you understand me? Yes, Ngozi whispered. Say it. Say you understand. I understand. I won't speak to you, or about you ever again. I won't come near you, or Amara. I understand. Chidi nodded and sat back down, his whole body sagging with exhaustion. The confrontation had taken everything out of him. Then Mama stepped forward. She looked at both of us, her eyes brimming with tears. Amara. Chidi. I owe you both an apology that I can never fully make. I believed Ngozi without question. I called you a monster, Chidi, without even hearing your side. I've spent my whole life taking Ngozi's word over everyone else's, and last night I did it again. Even when my own daughter's husband, a man who has shown nothing but kindness and respect to our family, was being accused of something horrible, I immediately believed the worst of him. Her voice broke. I am so sorry. There's no excuse for what I did. Chidi nodded stiffly, but said nothing. What could he say? The apology didn't undo the harm. Mama turned to me, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before. True, deep shame. Amara, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I favored Ngozi. You know this, we all know this. But you don't know why. She took a shaky breath. When I look at Ngozi, I see myself at that age. Wild, rebellious, making bad choices. I was the problem child in my family. I failed out of school, got into trouble, disappointed my parents constantly. But then I met your father, and he saw something in me worth saving. He believed in me when no one else did. He helped me turn my life around. Tears were flowing freely down her face now. When Ngozi started showing those same patterns, making those same mistakes, I thought I could save her the way your father saved me. I thought if I just loved her enough, supported her enough, made excuses for her enough, she'd eventually straighten out like I did. But what I didn't realize was that your father didn't save me by making excuses for me. He saved me by holding me accountable while still loving me. He believed in me, but he also demanded that I do better. I never did that for Ngozi. I just made excuses. She looked at my sister, who was crying silently. I created a monster and called it love. I enabled every bad behavior, justified every mistake, blamed everyone else for her problems. And I made you, Amara, pay the price for my guilt over my own past. Mama turned back to me. You were the easy child, the responsible one. You didn't need me the way Ngozi did, or so I thought. So I gave her all my attention and gave you scraps.
But you did need me.
You needed a mother who celebrated your achievements, who protected you from your sister's jealousy, who saw you. And I failed you. I failed you your whole life, and last night was just the culmination of years of failure. I felt something crack in my chest. This was what I'd needed to hear for decades. Acknowledgement. Validation that the favoritism I'd felt wasn't in my imagination. But hearing it didn't bring relief. It brought a deep, aching sadness for all the years we'd lost, for the relationship we could have had if she'd made different choices. Mama, I said quietly, I appreciate you saying this. I do. But it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change the past. And it doesn't mean I can just forgive and forget. I know, she whispered. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for the chance, someday, to try to be the mother you deserved.
Not now.
I understand that I need to earn that. But someday. I nodded. Maybe someday. But not today. Papa had been quiet through all of this, but now he spoke. Ngozi will not be returning to live with us. She's 28 years old, and it's past time she learned to take care of herself. However, we're not going to throw her out on the street. He looked at his daughter, disappointment etched in every line of his face.
You will find a job. Any job.
You will find your own place to live. We will help you with the first month's rent and nothing more. And you will go to therapy. That's not a suggestion. It's a requirement. You need professional help to understand why you did what you did and to make sure you never do anything like this again. Ngozi nodded, looking small and defeated. Auntie Ifunanya, who had been standing quietly by the door, spoke up. I'll take her in for 1 month. Just one. Long enough for her to find work and save money for her own place. But there will be conditions. Therapy twice a week, mandatory. Job applications every day. And absolute accountability. No excuses, no lies, no manipulation. If she breaks any of these rules, she's out immediately. It was more than Ngozi deserved, but Auntie Ifunanya had always been practical. Throwing Ngozi completely to the streets might feel satisfying, but it wouldn't actually solve anything. It would just create a different set of problems.
Thank you, Auntie, I said.
She nodded. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for your father, and for the slim hope that this girl might actually learn from her mistakes. Though I'm not optimistic. Papa stood up. We should go. We've taken enough of your time and energy. Ngozi. My sister moved toward the door without looking at any of us. But at the threshold, she paused and turned back. Her face was a mixture of shame, anger, and something that might have been regret. I really am sorry, she said, her voice small. I know you don't believe me. I know I don't deserve to be believed. But I am sorry. And I hate myself for what I did. Then she left, following Papa out the door. Mama lingered for a moment, looking at me with such sorrow. I love you, Amara. I always have, even when I didn't show it properly. I hope someday you can believe that. Then she too was gone, and Obiora quietly excused himself, leaving Chidi and me alone in our house once again. The days that followed were strange. Our home felt different, lighter in some ways, but also haunted by what had happened. Chidi threw himself into work, I think as a way to avoid processing everything. I tried to give him space, while also making sure he knew I was there whenever he needed me. About a week later, we were having dinner, just the two of us, when Chidi suddenly put down his fork and said, I need to talk about it. About what happened. About how I'm feeling. I put down my fork too, and gave him my full attention. I keep replaying it in my head, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just that night, but the whole thing. How quickly everyone believed I was capable of rape. My own mother-in-law, people who've known me for years, they didn't even question it. They just immediately accepted that I was a monster. He looked at me with anguished eyes.
What does that say about me?
About how people see me. If they could believe it that easily, maybe I'm not the man I thought I was. No, I said firmly, reaching across the table to take his hand.
No, Chidi.
Their willingness to believe the worst says nothing about you and everything about them. About their own biases, their own conditioning to always believe the accuser, about Mama's blind spot when it comes to Ngozi. It says nothing about who you actually are. But how do I move past this? How do I stop feeling like everyone is looking at me and wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was some truth to it?
Time, I said.
And therapy. I think we both need to talk to someone about this. What Ngozi did was traumatic, not just the false accusation but the whole situation. The betrayal, the manipulation, the violation of trust. We need help processing it. He nodded slowly.
Yeah,
I think you're right. The next day, I started looking for therapists who specialized in trauma and family conflict. I found someone who came highly recommended, Dr. Okonkwo, a woman in her 50s who had decades of experience with complex family dynamics. We booked sessions, both individual and couples counseling. I also called Kemi. My best friend had been texting me constantly since the night everything happened, asking if I was okay, if Chidi was okay, if there was anything she could do. I finally called her back and told her everything. I told you, she said, but there was no satisfaction in her voice, just sadness. I told you that girl was trouble. I saw how she looked at Chidi. I'm just glad you trusted your instincts. You were right to warn me, I said. If you hadn't said something, I might have dismissed my own concerns. I might have talked myself out of installing that camera. Thank you for validating what I was seeing. That's what friends are for, Kemi said softly. Speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable. How are you holding up? I don't know, I admitted. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm sad. Some days I just feel empty. My sister tried to destroy my husband's life. My mother chose her over me again. Even in this. How do you process that? One day at a time, Kemi said. And with good therapy. You're doing the right thing getting professional help. About 2 weeks after everything happened, Mama called and asked if she could come visit.
I almost said no.
I wasn't ready. But Chidi encouraged me to hear her out, said that holding on to anger would only hurt me in the long run. So I said yes, and the next afternoon, Mama showed up at our door with a small plant, a peace lily. She looked nervous, uncertain, like she didn't know if she'd be welcome. I let her in and made tea. We sat in the living room, the same room where everything had unfolded, and the silence was heavy between us. Finally, Mama spoke. I've started therapy too. Your father insisted. At first, I was resistant, thought I didn't need it, but he said if I wanted any chance of rebuilding relationships with you and with Ngozi, I needed to understand my own behavior. I sipped my tea and waited for her to continue. The therapist helped me see that I projected my own past onto Ngozi. I saw her struggles and thought I was seeing myself, so I made excuses for her the way I wish someone had made excuses for me. But it wasn't the same. My struggles came from poverty, from lack of opportunity. Ngozi's struggles came from being enabled, from never facing consequences. And I couldn't see the difference. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. She also helped me see that I neglected you because you didn't fit my narrative of redemption. You were successful without needing to be saved, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to relate to a daughter who had her life together. Isn't that terrible? I failed you because you were doing well. Yes, I said simply. It is terrible. Mama flinched but nodded. I know I can't fix the past. I know I can't undo years of favoritism and neglect. But I want to try to do better going forward. I want to try to be the mother you deserved, even if it's 30 years too late. I looked at this woman who gave birth to me, who raised me, who loved me in her own flawed way. Could I forgive her? Could I rebuild a relationship with her? I need time, Mama, I said finally. I need to work through my own feelings about all of this. I need to heal from the betrayal, not just from Ngozi but from you too. You chose to believe I married a rapist over believing in the man you'd known for 5 years. That cut deep. I know, she whispered. I know it did. But I'm willing to try, I continued. Not to go back to how things were, but to build something new, something healthier. But it will take time, and you'll have to accept that I may never fully trust you the way a daughter should trust her mother. Mama nodded, tears streaming down her face. That's more than I deserve. Thank you, Amara. Thank you for even being willing to try. She left shortly after, and I felt emotionally drained, but also slightly lighter. Setting boundaries, expressing my hurt, it felt good. Healthy. That evening, Chidi and I sat on our balcony, watching the Lagos sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. We've been doing this every evening since everything happened, just sitting together in comfortable silence, reconnecting without words. I heard from Obiora today, Chidi said. He ran into Auntie Ifunanya at the market. Apparently, Ngozi found a job as a receptionist at a small company, and she's actually going to therapy. That's good, I said. And I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want Ngozi to be destroyed. I wanted her to get help, to grow, to become a better person. I just didn't want her anywhere near us while she did it. Do you think she'll actually change? Chidi asked. I thought about it carefully. I don't know. Change requires not just acknowledging you did something wrong, but understanding why you did it and committing to doing better. It requires humility and self-reflection, and I'm not sure Ngozi has ever developed those muscles. But maybe hitting rock bottom will force her to develop them. I hope so, for her sake. Do you think you'll ever have a relationship with her again? Maybe, I said slowly. Years from now, if she does the work, if she truly changes, if she proves over time that she's become someone different, maybe then we could have some kind of relationship. But it would never be what it was before. That trust is gone forever. And honestly, it should be. Trust has to be earned, and she destroyed ours completely. Chidi took my hand. I'm proud of you, you know, for trusting your instincts, for setting up that camera, even though it felt wrong, for protecting me when no one else would. You would have done the same for me, I said, in a heartbeat. But not everyone would. Some people would have doubted themselves, would have let family pressure override their gut feeling. You didn't. You knew something was wrong, and you acted on it, and you saved us both. We sat in silence for a while longer, then Chidi asked, what do you think the lesson is in all this? If you had to sum it up, what would you say you learned? I thought about everything we'd been through. The suspicion, the planning, the betrayal, the confrontation, the aftermath. What had I learned? I learned that sometimes the people closest to you, the people who share your blood, your history, your family name, are capable of the deepest betrayal, I said slowly. I learned that family doesn't mean blind loyalty. It doesn't mean accepting abuse or betrayal just because someone is related to you. Real family, real love, is built on respect and trust, not just shared DNA. I squeezed Chidi's hand. I learned to trust my instincts, even when they're telling me something I don't want to believe. Especially then. My gut knew something was wrong with Ngozi's behavior, and even though it felt paranoid and awful to spy on my own sister, I listened to that instinct. And it saved you. I learned that truth always finds a way to come to light. I continued. Ngozi's lies were convincing. Her performance was perfect. If it had just been her word against yours with no evidence, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe our family would have torn itself apart arguing over who to believe. But the truth came out because we had evidence, because we were prepared. And I learned about the devastating impact of false accusations, I added, looking at Chidi's face in the fading light. I watched what it did to you, how it made you doubt yourself, how it traumatized you. False accusations don't just hurt the accused, they hurt everyone. They make real victims less likely to be believed. They destroy families. They ruin lives. What Ngozi did was monstrous, not just to you, but to every real victim of sexual assault whose credibility gets questioned because of people like her. Chidi nodded. I keep thinking about that. About how many men might be sitting in prison right now because someone lied about them and there was no camera to prove the truth. It terrifies me. I was one camera away from potentially spending years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Which is why evidence matters, I said. Why we can't just automatically believe or disbelieve anyone without looking at facts. It's not about not supporting victims, it's about supporting truth. Real victims have truth on their side. False accusers fear evidence because it exposes them. We watch the sun disappear below the horizon, the sky darkening to deep purple. I also learned something about forgiveness, I said quietly. I'm not ready to forgive Ngozi yet. Maybe I never will be. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who hurt you. It's something you give when, and if you're ready, and only if it serves your own healing. I'm not going to force myself to forgive her just because she's my sister or because people think I should. If forgiveness comes, it will come in its own time. What about your mother?
Chidi asked.
That's more complicated, I admitted. Mama's betrayal was different from Ngozi's. Ngozi actively tried to destroy us. Mama just repeated a pattern she's had my whole life. Choosing Ngozi over me, believing her over others. It's not right, it's not excusable, but it's different. I think I can work toward forgiveness with her because she seems genuinely remorseful and willing to change. But it will take time. Years, probably. And us? Chidi asked softly. What did you learn about us? I turned to look at him fully. I learned that we're stronger than I thought. We went through something that would destroy a lot of marriages. The stress, the betrayal, the trauma. But we came through it together. You trusted me even when you didn't know why I was pretending to go to Abuja. I trusted you even when my own family was calling you a monster. That kind of trust, that kind of partnership, it's rare. And it's worth protecting at all costs. Chidi pulled me close, and I rested my head on his shoulder. We're going to be okay, he said. It's going to take time and therapy and work, but we're going to be okay. Yeah, I agreed. We are. And sitting there on our balcony, watching the Lagos night settle in around us, I believed it. We would heal. We would move forward. The scars would remain, but they would fade with time. It's been 6 months now since that terrible night. Chidi and I are still in therapy, both individually and together. We're better than okay. We're stronger. The experience forced us to communicate more deeply, to never take our trust for granted, to actively protect our relationship. I haven't seen or spoken to Ngozi. According to Papa, she's still working at the reception job, still going to therapy, and apparently making some progress. Her therapist told Auntie Ifunanya that Ngozi is starting to take genuine accountability for her actions, starting to understand the deep-rooted issues that drove her behavior. I'm glad for her, truly. But I'm not ready to open that door again, and I may never be. Mama and I have had several more conversations. They're still stilted, still careful, but there's progress. She's trying, genuinely trying, to see me as I am instead of as the daughter she neglected. We're building something new, something healthier than what we had before. It will never be a perfect mother-daughter relationship. Too much damage has been done for that. But it might become something real and honest, and that's enough. Papa calls regularly to check on both Chidi and me. He's apologized numerous times for not seeing what was happening with Ngozi sooner, for enabling Mama's favoritism. We've forgiven him. He was caught between a problematic wife and a manipulative daughter, trying to keep the peace. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation we can understand. Auntie Ifunanya comes by sometimes for tea. She's become an unexpected source of wisdom and support. She told me once that she's proud of me for setting boundaries, for protecting my husband, for refusing to accept less than I deserve from my family. Coming from her, someone who has always seen through nonsense, that meant everything. The extended family knows what happened. The story got out despite our best efforts to keep it private. But Obiora's documentation, the metadata from the camera, the audio evidence, it all ensured that the truth was what spread, not Ngozi's lies. Chidi's reputation is intact. If anything, people respect him more for how he handled the situation with grace and restraint. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want to thank you. And I want to leave you with this. Sometimes the people closest to you, the people who share your blood and your history, are capable of the deepest betrayal. But truth always has a way of coming to light, especially when you're brave enough to seek it out and face it. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting what you know in your gut to be true. And protect what's yours. Your marriage, your peace, your truth. Protect it fiercely, even when doing so feels uncomfortable or wrong. Family is important, but not at the cost of your own well-being or the well-being of your spouse. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you, betray you, or destroy what you've built. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. And cutting off toxic people, even family members, isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. False accusations are devastating. They destroy lives, ruin reputations, and make it harder for real victims to be believed. If you're ever in a situation where you're being accused of something you didn't do, document everything. Save every text, every email, every piece of evidence. The truth matters, and evidence proves truth. And finally, forgiveness is a personal choice, not an obligation. You don't owe forgiveness to anyone who hurt you, no matter who they are or what relationship you have with them. Forgive if and when it serves your healing, not because you're pressured to do so. Chidi and I are rebuilding our lives with stronger boundaries, better communication, and a deeper appreciation for the trust we share. The camera that saved us is gone now. We don't need it anymore because the person we needed protection from is no longer in our lives. But the lessons it taught us remain. Protect your peace. Trust your partner. Believe in the truth. And never, ever let anyone convince you to doubt what you know is real. If this story resonated with you, if it taught you something or made you think about your own relationships and boundaries, please subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you deserve to be protected, believed, and loved by the people in your life. Accept nothing less. As for me and Chidi, we're more than survivors of what Ngozi tried to do to us. We're proof that truth wins, that trust matters, and that love built on respect and honesty can withstand even the cruelest betrayals. We're going to be just fine. Better than fine. We're going to thrive. And that's the best revenge of all.